Hello and welcome to Beyond the Bill Number. Today we have an incredibly exciting episode where we are joined by Karen, the woman behind it all. We're going to talk about this year, some really exciting stuff, some big accomplishments at BillTrack50, but also how AI has changed and affected the way we all work, but also the way BillTrack50 works, and maybe for the better because these bills are getting so long, but we'll unpack that a little bit more. So, welcome to the podcast today, Karen. It's crazy. This is the first time you've been on, and this is essentially your podcast.
It's great to see you, Sarah. I am excited to be here and check out how the whole Beyond the Bill Number thing goes.
Well, I would love to start off with how has this year gone for BillTrack50? I know Stephen and I have been busily covering some of the most audacious bills I think I've seen in my 12 years working with you. But there's also been not a lot of movement, but a lot more stuff, it seems like. So how was this year for you on this side of the house?
Yeah, well, as you know, the state bills have been going crazy. And so it's not surprising that we saw a lot more traffic this year, but we've grown every year for the last 9 years. So it's going well, I guess, as far as hopefully we're getting information out to people. We've been used in articles in National Geographic and CNN and The Guardian, and that's great. I feel very validated when, big news outlets use us. We've got a bunch of really great partnerships with a bunch of journalism organizations. So that feels really good. In general, BillTrack50 is doing great. I'm excited about the improvements we've made to the website. Our customers seem to be growing again, more customers, more revenue. So yeah, I think as far as BillTrack50 and not the legislation, things are on track.
Well, I love to hear that. And I also have loved every single update I've gotten this year about the new tools. I especially loved the AI summaries, but my favorite was the similar bills feature. And I just have to hoot it out for a second how great that feature is. I just used it on my latest post about biotechnology because I had found this one random bill that was really trying to organize a whole bunch of biotech stuff. And I was like, wow, this is really interesting. There has to be other stuff that's kind of like this and around this. And I used that feature and I just found the most interesting legislation. And we apparently got a comment on the podcast that it was a very good review of some very good legislation out there. This would have taken me so much querying and looking and all the stuff. I used to essentially do that, but I'd have to read through all of the weird bills where stuff was kind of mentioned but not really aligned. And so I love the new features we've come out with this year.
Yeah, and I love to hear that. I love to hear that you're liking it. We've gotten really good feedback on the similar bills. But here's what I like about it, which is going to be a very Karen answer. It's just math. It's astonishing that it works because it is purely math. So we have boiled down every bill into a vector, into basically just a list of numbers. And you look at your bill and we're like, okay, what bills have similar numbers? And then we bring that back. Genuinely, it's astonishing how well it works. Because you're like, yeah, those are similar bills. So I love it. I have loved learning all about it. AI is just, as far as intellectually stimulating, it is the bomb.
You heard it here first. How many vector numbers do you have? How specific are the numbers?
So it is 1064 is the list of numbers that we've got. So for each bill. And that's all it takes to summarize well enough to get that similar feature to work. Yeah, it's really amazing. It's practically a miracle.
Wow, 1,064. That's less than the total number of bills that Congress proposed this year by 1/10.
Well, yes, it is.
It's a good thing we have those. Okay, so I heard that these AI features are not your biggest accomplishment for the year. What is the biggest accomplishment for the year?
The big thing that we did this year is we launched our new regulation tracking and finally made it like it should have been all along. So it's always been like my secret shame. It's not a secret. I've let everybody know that the regulation tracking used to be at least you didn't have to read all the registers, but now it's genuinely what it should be. And it was just a huge project to get that to work. There was a lot of pieces that we had to get figured out because regulations aren't like legislation. And so to get it into that same easy to use spreadsheet and all this stuff about BillTrack50 was a lot. And it was really one customer who pushed us hard, and I needed that to get it to really needs to be. And now I am so proud of it. So I have to say that was our biggest accomplishment for the year was finishing and launching Regulations 2.0 and doing almost all of it in 6 or 7 months, which
Oh my gosh.
I just didn't think was going to be a thing. I mean, we were building on a base of having the old system, but yeah, getting it all done it was a lot. So I'm
Yeah,
very
that
proud
was
of it.
a sprint and a half for sure.
Yeah, yeah. And we could talk a little bit more about the pieces of it, but I'm very proud of it. And I think it works now. You can genuinely look at regs and track regs and get alerts when regs change. So it's good.
I loved it this year because one of my favorite episodes we did was with Dr. Jennifer Crosswright, who is the reg queen, especially in the family policy area. And having worked here for 12 years in some capacity, I hid from the regs. And I think maybe that's because they were hard or I didn't quite know. And maybe I didn't quite understand the value and impact of them as much. And it was just such an interesting conversation with her, and how she was saying that tracking the regs is actually how you can kind of get a quicker beat on what's generally happening and will be happening for different legislation and trends and things like that. And that was just a fascinating conversation. It was really interesting talking to her. And two, I was also just so pleased at how nice it looked and how easy it was to look around them, and I was like, this is a great tool. Like we're really figuring some stuff out here at BillTrack50.
I mean, the regs really are where the rubber hits the road. So
Yeah.
we all know that state laws affect us the same as federal laws, and so it's not usually hard to convince people like, yeah, you should look at state bills too. But the regs, we don't think about it. We don't get to interact with it. It doesn't make our radar very much, except
Mm-hmm.
sometimes when the EPA does some new thing and we're like, oh, good, the water's going to get cleaner or not,
Right.
depending. But
Yeah.
we know we're aware of regulations, but they have the same effect. We all have to follow them, and in particular, businesses have to follow them. But it's the minutia of Congress is
Yes.
like, we want help with your kids. This is okay. What do we mean by that, and what are the parameters? And it's pretty interesting. And you can shift that stuff and change our lives without making a new law. You can just
Mm-hmm.
read for it what it means to have clean water, and that's yeah, it is. It is a good weather vane for where things are going.
It's also what was interesting to me about that conversation, and something else that I've really been understanding, and I guess you could call it appreciating more this year, but I don't know if it's necessarily a sense of admiration appreciation I have. But people are getting pretty sneaky and smart with what we're doing in this country. And one of the things that I think was really interesting this year is we did this bill on silencer legislation, and they framed wanting to legalize silencers around hearing protection. And, I don't really care one way or the other about the silencers, but I was like, this is such an interesting approach that they're taking, where who in their right mind would say, no, I don't want people's hearing to be protected? And we saw these states that are generally pretty liberal with their gun laws putting these bills forward. And then I started thinking about the regulations and all of these things. And there's all of these just incredibly interesting way that people have kind of figured out how to try to move their agendas. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that in the years coming. And it's a lot of mental
Completely true.
energy.
Because, as Congress doesn't get very much done or very much passed, regs are still changing and those modifications can happen. And that is where policies can change without even Congress having to pass a law. So, I mean, at the state level, like states are still changing stuff like crazy.
Yeah.
But certainly at the federal level, the regulations are kind of where the action is at the moment.
Absolutely. Well, and speaking of states changing things like crazy, we just had an executive order from Trump asking people to not pass AI legislation. And there's been a lot of conversation on the podcast this year about AI, regulations, all these different things that it can impact. A lot of the times that we've had technical innovation, we haven't had regulation catch up as fast. And I think right now we're dealing with a lot of repercussions from that, especially as it relates to kids online and access, and some really horrific stuff that's definitely come out this year, but in past years.
You're right to make the comparison to the internet. That was the last rodeo where all this technology came that was really going to impact our lives. And we kind of all knew it. And we were hands off to let the innovation happen,
Mm-hmm.
which is not wrong necessarily. Maybe some guidelines are good or guardrails.
Right.
But so now we're doing it again. So will we do better? We'll see. But as you said, Trump is suing the states to stop the legislation that they've passed.
So, in a little bit of a less serious way, but a very serious way, how has AI impacted BillTrack50?
Yeah, well, obviously quite a lot. But as far as what I've been doing, just on the actual, technical, like here's the stuff. Obviously, for BillTrack50, we've added the AI summaries to all the bills, which then gave us the ability to do the similar bills and stuff like that. We've done the same for regs, and that's been good. We have added our AI chatbot so that you can like ask for help with how to use it. And we were using a service to do that in the beginning of the year. And ultimately, we took it on board and now we're managing it all ourselves, which has been a
Awesome.
very exciting learning opportunity. I've like genuinely enjoyed finding out how that all works. We've added a simple button on the bills where you can submit a question and we send it off to Claude, is the LLM we're using right now, and get the answer back. So we package up the bill for you and send it off to the AI. So that's working pretty well. So there's like all that forward stuff that you will see as a customer. But behind the scenes, it was absolutely instrumental for getting the regs project done. And so one of the problems that we had for regs was that when we have an entire register, hundreds of pages of 50 or 100 different regs, we just were showing you the whole thing because we didn't know where the reg started and where the reg ended. And
Mm.
so we needed to split those apart and into individual regs if we were ever going to have real reg tracking. So we were able to use AI not to split them apart, although we are kind of inching towards that, and that actually is kind of going okay.
Okay.
But we manually split them ourselves, us at BillTrack50, me, Steven, Kendra, all of us like split regs, like this is the top, this is the bottom, because a human can do it pretty quick. But we used AI to build the tools to let us do that split.
Ah.
And we could put together those tools very fast and then update the tools, iterate on the tools as we were using it to go, it really would be helpful if it could do this, if it could do that. And then that let us fly through it. And so we split 2 years worth of regs individually, person by person. We each took a state and chop, 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 week after week, month after month, all the way through all the registers. And we couldn't have gotten all those tools built and then the resulting analysis done without AI helping. So behind the scenes,
Wow.
AI really helps us build little helper programs so that we can
Yeah.
accomplish the things we want to accomplish. That is not customer facing. No one's ever going to split you know. But it did help us. And then
Hmm.
we had all of that data in a database, in a tool, and we could start to use machine learning to start to automatically split, which is kind of going okay. Our next step is trying to pull data out of the regs to populate the fields that we're missing. So
Yeah.
we want to show the effective data on all the regs. And in
Yeah.
some of the regs, like there's metadata, we can pull that out, or it's clearly delineated and we can parse it out. For the ones where we can't figure that out, we're trying to get AI to read the reg and tell us
Yeah.
what the effective, not quite there
Not
yet.
quite there.
It doesn't
Okay.
get it right enough of the time, but it's getting closer and closer, and we're modifying how we've got it laid out and the prompts and all of that, and we're getting there. And
Yeah.
hopefully, we'll be able to start actually extracting data by having the AI read and get that information out, and that will be very exciting and very helpful for everybody. But again, that's going to be a behind the scenes tool in a way that we can use AI not just to give you the AI chatbot, which is fine, but
Yeah.
to actually like build better products
Right.
faster, more complete, more data. So
Right.
it's just changing everything. But everybody is having this experience, right?
Yeah, it's so interesting to hear all of the different ways that you've been using it and behind the scenes. And as a consumer of BillTrack50, I've definitely noticed things and really enjoyed those advances. But it also sounds like, as the nerd and the math nerd you are, I also don't know if I ever thought about just how much data goes on behind BillTrack50, which is kind of crazy. And then to think about all of this that you're doing with all of this data that was already existing anyways and figuring out how to parse this before AI and work this out. Honestly, BillTrack50 is one of the most impressive tools I've ever seen in my whole entire life, and you've done an amazing job. No wonder you've been growing.
Oh, go on, do go on.
Well, speaking of really cool projects, you've done a couple of really cool things this year that have been really interesting. So I want to just take a moment to kind of enjoy and talk about those. So, this first one, there was a big journalism, local news thing going on.
Yeah, so there's this great initiative hosted out of Stanford University called Big Local News. And I love them. They
Yeah.
are all so smart and so interesting, and they are absolutely out there trying to support local newsrooms, which is so important. I think we can all agree. And so working with them has been just wonderful. And I've gotten to meet lots of young journalists, seasoned journalists. I've gotten to speak at a bunch of conferences and do all this different stuff and support journalists directly, help them find some bills and figure out stuff. But
Yeah.
one of the things, like that got me hooked up with a bunch of journalism schools where I met some
Okay.
journalism professors who are very great people. And so one of the ideas was as Trump started, this all kicked off at the beginning when he started putting all the executive orders out, some of which states were like great and other states were like no, this is terrible, and so there was like a big backlash over some of the executive orders, and so the journalism students were interested in trying to dig in and see how the executive orders were actually affecting laws in their state or if they were. And so we decided to build, and I didn't know if this would work because executive orders are so different from bills in
Right.
format and size and content, all that stuff. But it turns out if you turn them into a number, you can see what all it is. And it works. And so we built the executive order tool, which is now in BillTrack50 for everybody to use, where you can see what the executive order, what's the topic, what's it trying to do, and what are the states doing, in maybe in response or what were they already doing or what have you. But it is a way to compare kind of what the White House is doing with what how the different states think. And we looked at some Doge stuff, and there were states that were not doing that, and other states like Florida created a whole department of Doge. And that immigration was the particular one that kind of kicked this whole thing off. And some states were like saying these spaces are protected, and other states were saying no, we're going to have whole new groups of people out there doing enforcement. DEI states took totally different approaches, and it was completely interesting. And I loved working with the students and seeing what the resulting stories were. Loved that project so much. And it's great that it turned into a tool that we just put on BillTrack50. But one thing that the professor said, the resulting story was so interesting because he wanted to filter out and only look at bills that had crossed over. And I was like, well, but that cut, and he said, no, I'm only interested not in theater. I don't want the performative bills. I don't want bills that are just trying to make people mad.
Yeah.
We're just going to the facts. We're going to deal with what might actually impact our readers, what's really going to become a law. And so he was trying to turn the dial down and remove the sensationalism out of it. And I just thought that was such a smart point, and I respected it so much. If we just concentrate on and just let all of the performance, the rigmarole, just kind of wash over you and focus only on what might actually matter. That seems like good advice for just getting through this whole thing. So I loved that. I loved meeting them. Like they all had such smart ideas, and yeah, good stuff. And the kids are all right.
The kids are all right. At least we're trying to be, you know? I think that's also a really interesting aspect of this because this is something I was thinking about a lot with the executive orders, and we've talked a lot in the years about just how much more performative legislation seems to be getting. And then you can also see that where I think it's 2.8% of the bills proposed this year actually had some movement teeth and passed, and a lot of them were ceremonial. And so it's just, we're living in this really weird time and a kind of a viral age, and how people are getting elected, I think, is also impacting how a lot of this government is working, and actually being able to be like, oh, we're only going to focus on what's actually happening. I do think the subject matter that they had to write about probably decreased by what, like 98%?
Yeah, absolutely. But then that gave them helpful stuff that isn't trying to just, not trying to turn the heat up, just trying to get people some information. Yeah, it's very respectable. I like it.
Yes, I love it. I love it. I love it. And then you also did a hackathon, I hear?
Oh, yeah. So that was not necessarily directly BillTrack50, but it's definitely on the theme of the kids are all right. So this group in California, they were an association trying to encourage students forward, and they put together a hackathon with a prize, and they on the topic of AI for legislation. Wow. And I was like, that's amazing. And then they got people to actually put in projects, and I was like, that's really amazing. So they got kids excited, and they worked on these projects, and they did all these different things, and I loved what they did, and I was very excited to be included and get to mentor and get to be a judge and all of that. And somebody did a predicting if a bill would pass in Congress, which, maybe a bit of an obvious idea, but executed brilliantly. Lots of really good ideas and really nice thinking in there. And it just warmed my heart to see somebody giving it genuine, deep thought and understanding, again, kind of paring back all of the theater and getting just a kind of what is the actual things that matter for a bill to
Right.
move forward. And then another group of students put together a debate simulator,
Oh.
which I was like, that's weird. But I like launched it, and you can pick a bill, you give it a bill,
Mm-hmm.
and it reads the bill, and then you can debate a topic. So you say, like, is this a good or bad bill? Would be an
Yeah.
obvious choice. And then you could type in your thoughts, and then your opponent types in their thoughts, and then it would grade you and say who won, which is fun. But you could also debate the AI. And so I
Oh.
did that with a couple of bills to test it, and I found that really deepened my thinking to see it's making the pro case and me trying to make the con case, or vice versa. And then it graded both sides and said who won. And you could get it to debate itself, and like it would play both sides.
Oh.
Which is a really fun way to kind of get at like what is good about this bill, what
Right.
are reasonable objections to this bill. I just loved that idea so much. I was so impressed. Great stuff. Somebody else made an app for teaching kids civic in a kind of a Duolingo gamified way. Love that. Just exciting to see what people are up to and trying to build. And again, AI is letting you build these things more quickly, put together these apps and get them to the point where somebody could play with them and actually make something pretty fun. So I mean, that wasn't BillTrack50, but I would just loved it, and it made me very happy to have that as a thing in the world.
Well, we need a little bit of that, absolutely. So, all right. So to wrap us up, what do you see coming for next year? Give us the Karen take on 2026.
Oh my goodness. Well, of course, midterms, right? And so, from my point of view, that
Mm-hmm.
hopefully means, and it has in previous midterms, lots more traffic. We offer a scorecard product, and people put those up, and that drives tons of traffic,
Yeah.
which is great. I love that people come and look up their legislators' voting record. That's wonderful. For us internally, we'll be doing more AI. We'll be working on new projects. We've got lots of ideas for things to do, improvements we could make, additional data we could try to get in there with AI's help. So we're still certainly going to be pursuing that. But kind of related, I've been seeing more and more customers who are trying to build their own AI products, and they
Oh,
need data to build them on. And some of those are so exciting.
yeah.
People have such creative ideas. And some of them, they show me what they're building, and I'm so excited to see it out in the world. If you can get the AI the right information, put the right stuff around it, you really can build something genuinely helpful that people can just get so much more work done or understand things so much more thoroughly. It's just, I am so excited with some of what our customers are building. And I hope that I see more and more people coming to us, especially now that we've got this AI data feed for the regulations that we can
Yeah.
give people. Like lots of people are building on that, and so that's just wonderful. Like I'm excited to see how many more customers like that we can get and what they can build. So that is something I hope to see in the new year.
Well, I love all of those ideas, and I'm really excited to see what else we unpack next year. So, with that, we are going to end it. But thank you so much for coming, Karen. And for those of you listening, if this is your first time, we have new episodes in the feed every single Monday. And we usually unpack a very interesting bill. Some of them are not as journalistically integrity as those wonderful journalists. And sometimes Stephen and I do fall victim to the cannon fodder. But it's always interesting, and we're always trying to look beyond that bill number. So like, subscribe, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks so much again for coming, Karen.
All right, thanks, Sarah.